dear brothers and sisters in Islam, quick question for you. How many opportunities of righteousness, chances to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala throughout our weeks, throughout our lives have we missed out on? Think about that for a moment. I'll help you figure out some possible opportunities that you may have missed. Voluntary prayers. Now this is beyond our obligations, beyond the bare minimum. Optional, voluntary prayers. Begin with what they call rawatib. These are highly stressed prayers attached with the obligatory prayers. 2 rak'ahs before Salat al-Fajr, 2 before Dhuhr, 2 after, 2 after Salat al-Maghrib, 2 after Salat al-Isha, totaling 10 additional rak'ahs. Think about voluntary prayers of a similar nature. 4 rak'ahs before Dhuhr and 4 after. 4 before Salat al-Asr, 4 after Salat al-Maghrib, 4 after Salat al-Isha, totaling 20. Right now we're up to 30 additional rak'ahs or units of prayer that you could pray throughout the day. Think about Salat al-Duha, happens after the sun rises, which is from 2 to 12 rak'ahs. Think about Salat al-Witr, from 1 to 11 rak'ahs. Think about Salat al-Layl, praying in the night, which is open-ended. You could pray as much as you want, 2, 20, 30, more. What about extra days of fasting beyond Ramadan, beyond your obligations? Think about the sacred months, 4 of them throughout the year. Encouraged you are to fast during those months, like Al-Muharram, this very month. Think about special days. Yawm Ashura, that was yesterday. Did you seize that opportunity? Or did it pass you by? Think about Yawm Arafah, just weeks ago. The Prophet ﷺ encouraged us to fast on those days. The opportunity was amazing. Forgiveness, pardon, reward. Think about Mondays and Thursdays as a prophetic practice to fast. Think about 3 days of every month. Think about the white days, 13th, 14th, and 15th of the month. What about Siyam Dawood, which is fasting every other day? The best fast that can be done. Or consider Sawm al-Dahr, fasting the entire year. Opportunities that await us. What about optional charity? Beyond the zakat that you give, your obligation is to give zakat, 2.5% of what you've held on to for the duration of an entire year. Think about giving from your discretionary wealth to good causes, to help others, to support a masjid. Think about optional charity by giving a goodly loan. That's an act of charity, to lend money even, let alone give it away. Enjoining the good and forbidding the evil as an optional charity. Even smiling at others. How many opportunities have we had to smile at someone, to bring happiness to their life, and perhaps we did not take advantage. We didn't seize that opportunity. How about greeting those that you know and even those that you don't know by saying salam, extending words of peace, words that show care, a supplication, if you will, a prayer for someone else. Sometimes we reserve our salams just for our close family and friends. What about removing a hardship from someone's life, making things easy for others as a voluntary act of charity? Volunteering some of your time for the greater good of your community. Consider other acts of righteousness, optional things, reading the Quran. You know, today, the Quran as we know it has been divided into 30 parts. 30 juz. During the days of the companions, it was divided into 7 parts. That's right. As if to say, 30 parts was a pacing schedule to read one juz every day of the month, so that you completed the entire Quran, the Book of Allah, over the span of 30 days. Whereas the time of the companions, it was 7 ajza, as if to say a pacing schedule for you to complete the Quran weekly. Optional good deeds. Also, learning more about your faith. Knowledge has never been more accessible than it is today. Not to mention what's available in your community now, but all you have to do is go online. It's at your fingertips. It's in your pocket. You're carrying around opportunities with you just about everywhere you are. Do you take advantage of those opportunities? These are opportunities to gain the love of Allah. Acts of righteousness are a means to gaining Allah's love. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, relating, or he narrated a hadith Qudsi. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in this hadith, وَمَا تَقَرَّبَ إِلَيَّ عَبْدِي بِشَيْءٍ أَحَبَّ إِلَيَّ مِمَّا افْتَرَضْتُ عَلَيْهِ وَلَا يَزَالُ عَبْدِي يَتَقَرَّبُ إِلَيَّ بِالنَّوَافِلِ حَتَّى أُحِبَّهُ. My servant does not draw near to me, he doesn't come close to me with anything more love to me than the obligations. Your 5 daily prayers, your fasting Ramadan, your giving zakat. And then he continues and he says, my servant continues to draw near to me with the nawafil, the voluntary deeds, the optional deeds, until I love him. This is how you gain the love of Allah, by pushing yourself and taking advantage of opportunities such as those that I mentioned. And when you do, and you are blessed to receive Allah's love, there is a great reward in store. In this hadith, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues and he says, فَإِذَا أَحْبَبْتُهُ كُنْتُ سَمْعَهُ الَّذِي يَسْمَعُ بِهِ وَبَصَرَهُ الَّذِي يُبْصِرُ بِهِ وَيَدَهُ الَّتِي يَبْطِشُ بِهَا وَرِجْلَهُ الَّتِي يَمْشِي بِهَا وَلَئِنْ سَأَلَنِي لَأُعْطِيَنَّهُ وَلَئِنْ اسْتَعَاذَنِي لَأُعِيذَنَّهُ. This report in Sahih Bukhari. It says, when I love him, when Allah loves a servant, he says, I am his hearing with which he hears. I am his sight with which he sees. I am his hand with which he strikes. I am his foot with which he walks. Were he to ask something of me, I would surely give it to him. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves you, there's nothing he won't do for you. When you have gained and received his love, there's nothing that he won't give you. He won't reject your request. And of course, if you ask for his protection, he will certainly provide it. Brothers and sisters, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us so many avenues, numerous, almost uncountable ways that we can draw near to him. I mentioned just a few, surface level, the optional prayers, fasting, charity, volunteer work, reading the Quran, etc., remembering Allah. These things are just a handful of opportunities that await. And that may even seem overwhelming to many of us. Think about adding 10 more rak'ahs to your daily prayer schedule, 20 more after that, 30, adding another 10 or 20 in the night. Why is it that we struggle? What is it that gets in our way from pursuing the love of Allah? What is it that prevents us from what I imagine would be the desire of everyone in this room? I'm almost completely positive that if I were to ask you, do you hope to receive the love of Allah? Everyone would say yes. Maybe there's nothing more valuable than that. But what is it that gets in our way? there was a very similar situation that was brought to the attention of Ali ibn Abi Talib when he was the leader of the faithful, Amir al-Mu'mineen. And it was reported that a man came to him, radiyallahu anhu, and he asked him, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, inni qad hurimtu as-salata bil-layl. He says, I have been prevented from praying at night. Now, he's not talking about someone's physically stopping him. He's not talking about he's being withheld, he's being imprisoned, he's being drugged to sleep. But he's found himself incapable, unable. Something is in the way. The desire is there. He's complaining. And Ali ibn Abi Talib, Amir al-Mu'mineen of the time, he says, أنت رجل قد قيدتك ذنوبك. Says, you are someone who has been shackled by their sins. You have been shackled. You have been prevented by your own sins. And it's very possible that we, or I should say very likely, that we're being restricted by the same thing. The desire is there. Sometimes the intent is there. I'm going to wake up on time for prayer. Absolutely. I'm going to fast tomorrow. It's Yawm Ashura. The reward is something that you can't pass up. Pardon for the previous year. I'm going to give some of my wealth away. It's payday. I'm going to do it. I just got paid. The account is full. I'm going to give a little bit of that away. The intention is there. The desire for reward, the hope for Allah's love is there. But for some reason, our hand is steadied. It's bound. We don't follow through. Believe me, I'm not here to pass judgment. There's enough of that in the world already. But what I do want to draw your attention to is the ill effects of sin on your heart and how it can come between you and these opportunities, the opportunity to receive Allah's love. That's right, what we do has an impact. We can't begin to think otherwise. So what I want you to do is focus on one hadith. And this was reported in Sunan ibn Majah. One of the sayings of our beloved Prophet ﷺ, found in Sunan ibn Majah. It's authentic hadith. Reported from the companion Abu Hurairah, who said that the Prophet ﷺ says, إِنَّ الْمُؤْمِنَ إِذَا أَذْنَبَ ذَنْبًا نُكِتَ فِي قَلْبِهِ نُكْتَةٌ سَوْدَاء. That when a person of faith commits a sin, there is a dark spot that forms on their heart. Now, as you know, we've been talking about the importance of the heart, purity of heart as one of the primary objectives of Islam. And so when you sin, it is in direct opposition to the purity of your heart. It's working against you, those sins. He says, وَإِن زَادَ زَادَتْ حَتَّى تَعْلُوَ قَلْبَهُ. If the sin increases, if you continue to do it, then that dark spot on the heart continues to grow until it overtakes the heart entirely. فَذَلِكَ الرَّانَ الَّذِي ذَكَرَهُ اللَّهُ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ كَلَّا بَلْ رَانَ عَلَى قُلُوبِهِمْ مَا كَانُوا يَكْسِبُونَ. And this is exactly what's referred to in the Quran. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the ran, or we could say the covering. The covering of the heart of what you have earned. This is, you can find in the Quran. Surah Al-Mutaffifin, verse number 14. One of the greats of the Tabi'een, Al-A'mash, he said that in explanation of this ayah, that Mujahid ibn Jubair, he was also from the Tabi'een. Those were the followers of the companions, like the offspring, the sons and daughters of the companions that were not alive during the time of the Prophet ﷺ. Mujahid ibn Jubair, radiyallahu anhu, recited the Quran in its entirety to Ibn Abbas 3 times. And we know Ibn Abbas to be the scholars from the companions of the Quran. He recited to Ibn Abbas 3 times, and every ayah he stopped and asked, why was this revealed? For what purpose? For what reason? What's the ruling? Not just a quick review 3 times through, but a real thorough study. And so when it came to this verse, he taught his fellow classmates, if you will, some of them his students, what it meant. And he used the example of the palm to the heart. He said that Mujahid used the palm as an example of the heart, and he said that whenever a person sins, one of the fingers closes down upon it, and he used his pinky finger. And then when they sin again, another finger closes down upon it. And then when they sin again, another finger follows after that, until finally the heart is covered and concealed. Those sins, they close the heart. Right? The heart has to be open to receive Allah's love. And when you sin, it closes the door to that. And the more you do it, the tighter the doors are closed. The more you do it, it becomes locked. There's no window, there's no crevice, there's no crack, there's no way light can get in that heart that is riddled with the disease of sin. Sins, they darken the heart. Imagine a diseased organ. Let's make it visual. Imagine a diseased organ as it becomes covered and hardened. Imagine lungs of a smoker. Now, we've all seen the commercials. We've seen some documentaries. They teach that in school now. It's common knowledge. Imagine the lungs of a smoker. They begin smoking, and over a period of weeks or months, the lungs, they begin to change color. And they become dark, and then they become blackened. And then after years, they can become cancerous, and they can lead to your death. And sin can do the same thing. It has a similar effect on the heart. The heart begins to darken, and eventually will lead to your death. It was said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He inspired to Musa alayhi salam and said, Ya Musa, inna awwala man mata min khalqi Iblis. The first of my creatures to die was Iblis. You may say, well, Iblis is not dead. He's in good working order. We know that because we're tried and tested with his whispers all of the time. And that's not what's meant here. It says, وَذَلِكَ أَنَّهُ أَوَّلُ مَنْ أَصَانِي, the first of my creatures to disobey me, وَإِنَّمَا أَعُدُّهُ مَنْ أَصَانِي مِنَ الْأَمْوَاتِ. I consider anyone who disobeys me to be from the dead. And this may be something you're familiar with in how we use language and express ourselves, especially those that have harmed or hurt us. We say, they're dead to me. They could be as healthy as possible. They're dead to me. And this is the ill effect of sin. It can cut you off from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so, one of the greats of the past, Abdullah ibn Mubarak, he authored a number of lines of poetry in regards to this, and he said, رَأَيْتُ الذُّنُوبَ تُمِيتُ الْقُلُوبَ وَقَدْ يُورِثُ الظُّلَّ إِدْمَانُهَا وَتَرْكُ الذُّنُوبِ حَيَاةُ الْقُلُوبِ وَخَيْرٌ لِنَفْسِكَ إِسْيَانُهَا. Because of sin, the hearts have died. Their addiction is the cause of shame. By leaving sin, the hearts are revived. Good for the soul is rebelling from blame. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين من كل ذنب فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. بسم الله والحمد لله حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا فيه كما يحب ربنا ويرضاه ونصلي ونسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. My dear brothers and sisters, sins, they corrode the heart. They corrode the heart like metal is corroded with rust. The great Imam Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala, he explicitly said this very thing, that the heart is corroded from sin. And if the sin or the sinning becomes too much, then the heart will be covered and concealed. It will grow to the point of being locked, covered, impenetrable. The heart will be covered by such sin. And when the heart is weakened by the corrosion of sin, it can be easily overtaken and manipulated. That's right. Sometimes we think, even in moments of sin, we're fully in control of our lives. And I do what I want to do. But, as discussed, the heart is king. The heart is king and commands its soldiers. Ibn al-Qayyim, he says that if this happens to a person after they've been guided, after they have received insight, then things will become so confusing that the top will become the bottom. And at that point, يَتَوَلَّهُ عَدُوُّهُ وَيَسُوقُهُ حَيْثُ أَرَادَ. The enemy will take over and will steer them wherever he wants them to go. The shaitan, if your heart becomes too weak, your faith is too weak, because your heart has been poisoned and corroded, then the shaitan has a rein on you, if you will, like you would with a horse or an animal, steering you in any direction. Go left, go right. The breeze blows this way, you follow after it. The desires, they point you in one direction and you follow after them, thinking the whole time that, no, I'm in control. So how can we overcome this? How do we overcome the weight of sin? How can we get back on track? Because sin throws us off. It throws us off the path. It throws us into confusion. When we were once intending to traverse the path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, now we find ourselves off course. It's like the GPS stopped, and now we need to reroute. We need to recalibrate. How do we do that? Where do we start? We go back to that hadith I told you to focus on, from Ibn Majah. I asked you to focus on one hadith. Let's return back to that, because in that hadith, the Prophet ﷺ gives us the first step. He says, فَإِذَا تَابَ وَنَزَعَ وَاسْتَغْفَرَ سُقِلَ قَلْبُهُ. That if he repents and he gives up that sin and he seeks forgiveness, the heart will be polished. The heart will be cleaned. The sins will be scrubbed away as if they were never even there. This is the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah Azza wa Jal is oft forgiving, pardons the faithful, those that ask. If you do not seek forgiveness, if you do not ask Allah to pardon you, then you will continue to live with the burden of sin. And then, of course, as he said, وَنَزَعَ. You have to leave that. You have to make a pact, an oath with Allah. I seek your forgiveness, and I will refrain. I will stop. Even if you lapse, you fall back into it later, and that's to be expected from time to time. But if your heart is sincere, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will pardon you of that sin. And He will purify your heart as if it was never there. The Prophet ﷺ, he says, التائب من الذنب كمن لا ذنب له. The one who seeks forgiveness and repents is like the one who did not commit the sin in the first place. Brothers and sisters, we cannot be overwhelmed. We cannot feel too burdened to step forward towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and get back on track so that we can take advantage of the opportunities that we have to gain His love. Never underestimate Allah's willingness to forgive, His willingness to pardon. In fact, this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves to do. He loves to pardon the faithful. Do not let the whispers of shaitan make you think otherwise, because shaitan will say, you're not good enough for forgiveness. You're not good enough for righteousness. You don't deserve reward. You're filthy, you're foul, you're disgusting. This is what shaitan wants you to feel so that you do not repent. But that is absolutely not the case. That is absolutely not the case. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will pardon the sins equivalent to the foam on the ocean. Whatever you come with, if you're sincere, then Allah will pardon it. If you are sincere and you make a plan to get back on track, consider those sins forgiven. Consider it a new opportunity, a new beginning. Consider it your rebirth, if you will, when seeking Allah's forgiveness. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, قُلْ يَا عِبَادِ الَّذِينَ أَسْرَفُوا عَلَى أَنفُسِهِمْ لَا تَقْنَطُوا مِنْ رَحْمَةِ اللَّهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَغْفِرُ الذُّنُوبَ جَمِيعًا إِنَّهُ هُوَ الْغَفُورُ الرَّحِيمُ. Say, O my servants, who have transgressed against themselves by sinning. The Prophet ﷺ was commanded by Allah to tell the faithful these words. Do not despair. Do not despair of the mercy of Allah. Indeed, Allah forgives all sins. Indeed, Allah forgives all sins. Not talking about just the little ones, but we're talking about the major sins as well that can be pardoned. Indeed, it is He who is forgiving. It is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that forgives, and He is the merciful. Brothers and sisters, you are only one request of pardon away from forgiveness. You are one request of pardon away from success. We ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala pardon us of our sins and forgive us of our misdeeds, that He purify our hearts from the darkness and the gloom of despair, and that He guide us to that which He loves and is pleased with. وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين وأقم الصلاة.